Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd love to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering community. And we have a very, very special guest today that I am so thrilled to call her my friend. She and I met uh, when we were put together to help Tim Sohn on perspectives, showing up perspectives on cancer, and we co-hosted his event several times. I don't remember exactly how many, but it's been a while. And I've also interviewed Erica, and she's got an amazing, amazing story that you're all going to love. So at this time, I'd like to introduce to everyone a very special person, and you'll see why. Erica Neubert Campbell, please share with us who you are, what's going on, and let's get into a phenomenal conversation.
Wow. That's an incredible introduction, Mark. And I am so grateful to know you. And I've just gotten a chance to get to know some of the folks on this call today. So first, I can start with all the labels, right, that people could perhaps think about me or say about me is number one, I'm currently working at Second Harvest Heartland, which is the nation's second largest food bank based in Minneapolis. I'm their Chief Development Officer. I just spent 8 years as the executive director of a nonprofit helping kids with cancer and their families called the Pinky Swear Foundation. I'm
Mhm.
also a mother of two. I'm a wife. I'm a friend. And I call myself a cancer orphan, as I lost my mother to breast cancer nearly 20 years ago. And these are all the labels that you might think about me, but I know Michael might appreciate. I also describe myself in certain circles as the contract that I have with myself, which is I am a powerful, authentic, loving woman. And I think that is where my values align when you take away all those labels. And so, Michael, that's a special nod to you and the work we did together in our transformational class. But I'm just really grateful. I am a breast cancer survivor as well as one of those labels, and uh, I am proud of the journey that I've been through because it was hard and challenging. I also am grateful for the people like you that I've met through that experience and the choices that I've had to make along the way to get to this survivorship side.
Absolutely fantastic, Erica. Uh, why don't we start with how your connection with cancer began? And it began with your mother. So if you could share that story, that aspect of it. I mean, there's so many different phases. Well, and I know I'm going to miss some, but why don't we start there? And if there's something before that, why don't you let us know?
For sure. I'll take you back a little bit. Um, you know, m- my mother was just a really compassionate and humble leader. And actually, I'll start even slightly before her diagnosis. I was really struggling in my 20s because I didn't feel like I had purpose in life. And I remember I was really, really miserable. And one day she called me and she said, "It's time. Your pity party of one is over. You need to stop focusing on your own self and your own problems, and you need to get out in community and volunteer because the best way to remove your own problems is to help others. And solve theirs." And so from that really jarring and sort of direct conversation, I went out and started to volunteer in the community outside of the work that I was doing during the day. One of the most powerful things I ended up finding was a summer camp for children with cancer. And that was such an incredible transformation experience. And to be at a summer camp with 100 kids battling cancer, I would say I'd never been more surrounded by that disease, but I'd never been more joyful. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy there because when that community came together, everybody was normal. Everybody felt like they were on the same journey and they all understood each other. And I really understood the power of a cancer community in that space. During that time, was volunteering a lot, and I learned what I call the vocabulary of cancer. Those words that many of us who have experienced this disease have now learned, whether it's neutropenia or portacath or chemotherapy, and all of these really complex words. So during that time, my mother then was diagnosed with her own breast cancer journey. And I would say that I felt prepared based on that vocabulary of cancer, but I wasn't. And I witnessed her go through an incredibly challenging 4 year up and down battle with breast cancer. George, as you mentioned, sort of that surgery, chemotherapy, recovery, celebration, and then she would relapse. And we went through that cycle many, many times. And unfortunately, you know, I held her hand as she took her last breath, which changed me as a person. And I think Lihia, you've also expressed that challenge, and that really, I sometimes define my life as before my mother's passing and after. So I want to recognize the struggle that you've been in. And then fast forward 15 years later, I was diagnosed myself with breast cancer. So Mark and I met when we talked about a show that we were on called Perspectives on Cancer. And I would say because of those three experiences, being a volunteer with kids with cancer, experiencing my mother's journey, and then being my own breast cancer journey, I have multiple perspectives on cancer as a disease. I've seen the silver linings, I've seen the dark journeys, and everything in between.
You have been through a lot and you have experienced so much. Uh, by the way, welcome to the people who came a little bit late, no problem. Sergio Rodriguez and Carrie Reed, welcome.
Carrie.
And
Welcome.
let's go back to your journey, Erica. Uh, I mean, an amazing, amazing journey. So I had never heard that part about your mother sending you to, go out and volunteer. What a fantastic message. I mean,
Right?
what
Yeah.
an example. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And, that is a sign of an incredible, incredible person, incredible parent who
Yeah.
recognized something in their child and said, hey, you got to wake up. I mean, no, really,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal that she did that. And,
Yeah.
you know, for those people that are parents, we're essentially the leaders of our own team, whether it be one or two or three or four or whatever it may be. We are leading the children of the next generation. And it is our responsibility to empower them and guide them and not just let the world, you know, do whatever with them. It is up to us. And our children are a direct reflection of us. And so for your mother to do that, that is absolutely, thank you for sharing that. That is absolutely spectacular. So
Yeah.
if you want to add anything more to that, be my guest. But your story has a long way to go. So
Yeah. No, I just thank you for recognizing that. It was a wake up call, and it was many years ago, but I remember it. I remember where I was standing. Um, and it was interesting. I did take her advice to heart. She's a very smart woman. But I tried on lots of different things. I would say that, like, first I did some Habitat for Humanity, and I worked with a Brownie Girl Scout troop, and I cleaned up trash on a river. And all those things were great, but they didn't speak to my heart. And I think what's interesting is when I stepped on the campus for an orientation session to be a camp counselor for children with cancer, I could feel it in my bones, like you got the goosebumps, and I knew this was where I needed to be. I didn't know why, and I didn't know what the future was going to hold, but I knew I was in the right place. And I think that's also something as cancer survivors, it's just being in tune with yourself and your body and what's right for you. I had to trust myself in that process because there was like that tap on the shoulder that was like, you're here and you're in the right place. And it was, those were transformational experiences. So, what I also think about there is the beginning of that self trust that we all get to listen to the little voice in our head that sometimes, isn't always the loudest voice, but the one you want to listen to the most. So, it's just a little plug for that self trust and that taking a step back and recognizing when you think you're in the right spaces and when you're not.
So let's talk more about your journey with your mom and your mom's cancer journey, please.
Yeah. You know, uh, gosh, so many things to say there. I think first, it's not that I didn't believe her, but that I was told it was such a low risk cancer and there was nothing to worry about. I think in that initial diagnosis, I thought it was like breast cancer light, and the path was clear and the statistics were there. And so I sort of was like, all right, mom, I know you're on a journey and I'm here to support you, but you got this. And when she relapsed the first time, that's when I really had that probably second wake up call in my life. And I do remember that phone call when she called me. Um, and in fact, she didn't say anything. She was so upset that she couldn't speak. And so my father had to deliver the news to me. And so that's when it felt like I was in a car crash, right? Where you're like, you just don't see anything coming, and suddenly your world has just completely flipped. That's when I knew it was serious. And I actually made some choices to get more involved, right? I decided to um, go to almost every single one of her chemotherapy treatments, and they were 2 nights in the hospital. And, one of my favorite things was I think cancer is a rule breaker. And what I mean by that is I would go into the hospital with her and they would say, oh, it's evening hours, time for you to leave. It's 10 p.m. And I was like, thank you, but no. And I would climb into the twin bed with her and spend the night. And the nurses would look away, with the blind eye intentionally to let that happen, which was, outside of their rules. Um, but, those were really, really challenging times, but I didn't feel comfortable leaving her alone. And also some of the most beautiful times. To be alone with someone late night in a hospital is probably some of the most intimate times to have a conversation with someone. So, I hate those memories and I love those memories at the same time. She went through several cycles of, as I mentioned, relapse um, and a spreading of her disease. And one of the things that, relates to my diagnosis then is towards the end of her life, her medical file was very large. It was paper-based and the kind that almost looked like, the tome of, Lord of the Rings or something. And a young doctor came in, again, late at night, and he was flipping through her file just very casually. I think he was probably on the late shift and a little bit bored. And he made a comment and he said, "Oh, this is interesting." And he was looking at the beginning of her journey. He said, and for those of you familiar with breast cancer, he said, if she had had a double mastectomy from the beginning instead of a lumpectomy where they just took out the little lump, she may not be in this situation today. And it was a super painful comment because it referred to a decision that we had made about her care 4 years ago, at the start of her journey. And it was a very, he wasn't trying to be mean, but it was a comment that I stayed with for a very, very, very long time. And after she died, I vowed that if I ever got breast cancer myself, I would make a different choice at that initial start of my diagnosis. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. So sure enough, when I was diagnosed myself 15 years later, that conversation came back for me. And I did get a chance to rewrite my story and make a different choice. And I am alive and healthy today. And so it's just been a really interesting full circle journey between two diagnoses of breast cancer and two different outcomes with two different choices.
You had mentioned you had some very deep, in-depth conversations with your mother in the hospital.
Yeah.
Do you re Do you recall what was one of the most memorable and things that really left an impression on you moving forward?
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, this went on for years, so there's many, many, but probably the most poignant, and many will you appreciate was, sort of again when we could start to see the writing on the wall and where this journey was going, and there wasn't really a U-turn moment, potentially for her care. My dad was just beside himself and couldn't handle kind of taking on the heaviness of what may or may not have been coming for her. And so she sent him off. She's like, go get us chicken wings. And he's like, why chicken wings? And I think in her mind, she like knew it was far away to go to the chicken wing store, right? And so he's like, okay. And then, and so he left. And a few minutes later, she said, okay, it's time for you and I. We got to talk about what the future holds, and it was really beautiful. I'm sorry, I haven't talked about this in a long time, but she was like, I'm probably not going to make it to your wedding. So here's the things I want to tell you about marriage. Right. And like, whew, so powerful. And she said, various things like, I will be there in spirit. And, just some really, and here's like, make sure you go to marriage counseling before you get married. She gave me like all these things. I wasn't even dating anybody. She's here giving me like marriage advice. And she also talked about her end of life and what she wanted. And she said, I'm sure that I will not be able to speak but I want you to know that I can hear you. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, I'm sure that I will be on some kind of medicines that will make you think that I'm not there, but I will be there. And so those were so powerful. If I knew the outcome for her, whether or not she was going to pass away, if it had been a car crash, I never would have gotten that kind of advice and that kind of like really deep thoughtfulness of a transfer of knowledge and love. And so I do think that that was the one silver lining that cancer gave us that opportunity to talk about what's important in life. She said things like, remember that family is everything, and remember that. And she gave me all of these life lessons. I'm really, really, really grateful for that.
I think, and I think many here have experienced it, but when you are, and this leads back to what you've been talking about, Erica. I think with cancer, for many people, it has taught us how precious life is. And when we're staring at our own mortality right in the face.
Yeah,
And so I think you realize how important things really are that you need to say, that you need to get out to the people that you love. And so that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that you experienced. And I'm so glad that you had that opportunity
yeah,
because for many people, when they're on their deathbed, it's like, I wish I would have done that. But when you have that time before, your time has come to share these beautiful things with the people that you love, there is nothing more precious than that.
yeah. And do it now. Right? Do
Yes,
it now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
With,
mean, so
whether
that's
you're in a cancer diagnosis or not, I say it's great to, the greatest gift is connection and love, right? And to do it now.
absolutely very, very well said. And it doesn't matter because let's face it, life is short. None of us, everyone here, none of us knows when we're going to go. And so why not share with the people that you love? And tell them often. Tell them that you love them. Tell them how much they mean to you. Because at some point, you're not going to have that opportunity. So you have to do it while you have that opportunity. So make sure that, that you take the time because let's face it, you know, billionaires on their deathbed, what would they rather have? Money or time? I don't think there's a single person that would say money. Everybody wants that time when it's their time, when they're facing their mortality in the face. And so, I think this is a beautiful, beautiful lesson that you're sharing with us, Erica. So thank you so much. And let's continue on with your journey.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, 15 years after she passed away, I then found myself literally in the same position. And you'd think that after spending 20 years with children with cancer and my mom's several relapses, that I would be more prepared. But certainly the news hit me like a brick wall. And I really had to dig deep in terms of, again, facing the questions you just said, Mark, about life is short and mortality. And, um, when I think back to this time, it was really how much information comes at you so fast. So I'm sure many of you in a cancer diagnosis know that it's like drinking from a fire hose and it's coming at you and you didn't see it coming. Um, and uh, trying to manage through that and at the same time trying to make a lot of choices, right? I mean, there's so many choices with your care, and doctors are throwing incredible numbers, names, statistics at you. And I just I have a lot of compassion for folks at the start of the journey who really, that's the hardest part. It's not just the choices that you have to make, it's also the waiting. I think it was Carrie who said, she's got a scan coming up, and then you got to wait several weeks for the consultation and results. I actually say to every cancer patient I talk to, that is actually the worst part of your journey. No matter what cancer you end up with, the worst part is the waiting because there's so many what ifs. And in the absence of information, of course, your brain is naturally wired to come up with worst case scenarios. And I feel like cancer becomes a mental game at the start before it becomes a physical game. And so I really fought very hard to manage my own mental, and not just mental energy, but mental thoughts. And I did a lot of journaling and, a lot of processing in that waiting time, which really was a challenge.
So when you got diagnosed, Erica, what went through your mind and how did you utilize what you learned from your mother into your journey to help you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was diagnosed, I thought, oh my God, is this the beginning of my end? Is this the same story on repeat? And I really had to uh, reflect on my mother's journey. And it had been many years, but like I said, there were some really powerful moments of regret almost that I faced. And so one of the as I told the story of that young physician late at night, I remember meeting with my oncologist, and he said, you're going to have some choices. You have to choose to A, do nothing, not really an option. B, you could choose a lumpectomy, which is just, again, taking out a small lump, or three, having a single or double mastectomy where they remove, all of the body part, all of the breast. And I think I might have been the world's first and fastest decider because in that moment I was like, well, I've decided I'm going to have a double mastectomy. And the physician was like, most people want to take some time with this. Most people want to consult others. And I was like, yep, I have. I've probably been waiting for this for the last 15 years. So, I did, of course, think about it, but I'm still, I would say, friends with my oncologist and surgeon, and he does laugh about I probably was the first and fastest person to make the decisions. But there were still many within that. And so I relied on all of the support networks because I had known that two things I learned, in my mom's journey, she felt very alone. This was many years ago, before the internet, before support communities like this. And so I knew that it was important to find community and to share authentically. My mother kept her diagnosis very close and very private. And so I made a choice to be the opposite, which is to reach out and find support. And then, of course, I made different choices than her about the treatment, just based on what I had learned. And I always joke, one of the most interesting moments was when I shared with my team at work that I had had a cancer diagnosis. And I told them I had chosen a double mastectomy and I was going to be out of work for many weeks. And very tearful conversation at work, very awkward. But afterwards, after everyone kind of leaves the team conference room, a woman I just hired in the office, she pulls me aside and she leans in and she whispers and she says, I've had a very similar diagnosis and surgery and reconstruction years ago. I was like, oh, wow, tell me everything. She goes, well, how about I show you? And would you like to see my breasts? Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm at work. I don't know this woman. I'm supposed to be in a professional setting, but yes. We found a bathroom off the beaten path, locked the door. She shows me her breasts, and they look so real. She looks great. She looks healthy and happy and whole. And in that moment, I thought so many things. Number one, what a gift to have such vulnerability from someone I've just met, a stranger practically. And also, what hope. Because I knew, of course, from many, my mother's journey and other things, I knew it was going to be hard and I knew it wasn't going to be easy and it was going to be painful and a very, very long journey. But I knew that in 5 years, I could look like this person. And that created a vision and a North Star of where I got to go because I knew it was going to be a deep, dark valley first, but I had to keep my eyes up. And this woman created a vision for me. And I will be forever grateful for that.
And that brings us to the point where, and this has been one of the greatest blessings of my journey, is to have met so many people that are so willing to help, so many cancer patients and survivors. And that's been the thing that's just blown my mind through this whole process. Uh, when I was diagnosed and I was at my worst, this was during the pandemic. And so I was stuck in my room anyway. And unlike most people that were saying, hey, I'm stuck at home and, this is terrible and everything, I was like, doesn't bother me at one bit. I wake up in the morning and I get on LinkedIn and I reach out to people all over the world every day. And the thing that left me with the greatest impression was I'd be meeting all these strangers all over the world, and yet the moment we made contact and the moment we started talking, it was like I had met a new best friend.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter from where in the world that they were. They were like, this is what I wanted to talk to the people who had walked the walk. I could all day long, I could, go on the internet and find people who are trying to sell me something, or doctors or nurses and things like that. But I think it's so important for all of us to talk to the people who've actually been through it,
Yeah.
because that way you're going to get a totally different perspective. You're going to get it from the horse's mouth. You're going to get it from people who actually went through it. And all of our cancer journeys are different. Everybody has a journey that is different. Nobody has the same journey. We're all different people. We're all at different stages health-wise, and we're all different physiologically, and we all have different cancers. Some cancer stories are very, very similar, but that's the beautiful thing about it is I just marveled, absolutely marveled at the people who were so willing to reach out and help and go above and beyond. It was like, like I'd ask them, hey, so what'd you do? Oh, I did this. In fact, let me help you find this. And they'd send me links and constantly. And and so that is has been the most amazing thing to me in this cancer journey. And I'm so thankful to everyone that I've met along the way, such as all of you, and every single one of the people that I've met. So I've been so thankful for it. Erica, continue, please continue with your story.
Oh,
I
no, I would
I
just say,
just
I want to agree with you, Mark. And I always say that cancer is a club you never want to belong to. But once you get there, you meet the most amazing people. And so I just want to validate that. Again, I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy, but certainly to have the opportunity to meet so many fantastic people with that connection of vulnerability and authenticity and sort of shared humanity, that's a silver lining for me.
absolutely. And this is my personal point of view. I have met the greatest people
Yeah.
I have ever met in my life through this cancer journey. And because there's a certain amount of genuineness uh, with people who are really want to help. And that's been the thing that's been so amazing. And hopefully, each and every one of you will turn around and do the same for somebody else. Because if you do the same for even if it's one person, and we start multiplying and we start helping each other and we start doing things for others and helping others, that's how this world comes together, and that's how we can help people with their cancer journeys and beat this disease.
Yeah. And thank you, Mark, because one of the things that about 5 years after my diagnosis and all my treatment was over, and everything was, I would say, quote, back to normal, though you're never really back to normal, right? You're changed forever. Um, One of the decisions I made was to pay it forward in the way that you've described, and not just through connections and conversations like this, but I ended up writing a book about my journey, specifically on the choice and what it's like for a woman to have to make these big decisions about their body. And so I have it here, of course, my shameless plug of it's called The Mastectomy I Always Wanted. And it's a nod to that story I told you about the woman in the bathroom at work, because I felt so grateful for like this intimate moment that she shared with me that again gave me so much hope and so much confidence. And I thought, how rare. And I didn't want this to die just in this one interaction between the two of us. So I created this book that's kind of like that experience. It's got photos. It has actually like really practical tips that she gave me, and also some poetry that's straight out of my journal. If you ever want to know what it looked like for me alone at night, writing in a journal about cancer, you can find it there. And actually, I always laugh. Um, the poetry part was, again, almost transcribed from my journal. And I was really nervous and embarrassed almost to put it in there because A, I'm not a poet. And B, it's super, straight from, the things that you would probably never say out loud. And they're people's favorite part of the book. So catch that if it's something of interest to you.
Wow. What if you were to sum up the most important thing that you want to get across to your audience from the book, what would it be?
I do have three key messages that I often talk about. And I think for this community, the first one will relate the most, which is you are not alone. I'm sure when each of you were diagnosed, the very beginning, you felt really alone. You may not have known somebody with a similar cancer, a similar situation, a similar story, but over time, you probably found your people. Rather, I hope you did. So, number one is you are not alone. If you haven't found your people, connect with Mark and he'll find your people for you. The second one I often talk about is never
That
give
was
up.
pretty sly,
I
Erica.
know. Yeah, just a shameless plug for Mark Kagayama. Um, but never give up. I mean, I watched this beautiful documentary that also was called Dying is Not Giving Up. You never give up. And I think that's um, just something to think about when you're in a struggle. And then the last one I always love is trust the process. I even actually have a card here that I have on my desk. It says trust the process because it's you have to trust so many people. Number one, you have to trust yourself. Remember, I talked about listening to that voice and turning up the volume on the little voice inside your head. But you have to trust doctors. You have to trust caregivers. You have to trust your community to show up for you. And so I just think trusting that process and that journey, and above all, trusting yourself.
That is great advice. Absolutely great advice. And we really appreciate your knowledge and your sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Uh, talk about how you dealt with cancer with your family and how that happened. What did you do to bring them in, and were they supportive? And how old were your kids at the time? Please talk about things like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, my husband knew about my mother's journey, but when I got that phone call from the physician, hung up the phone, and the next phone call I had to make was to my husband, right? And uh, that was probably the hardest because it was the very first time I had to say the words. When the physician called me, I was in listening mode. I just had to listen to the diagnosis and to take the notes and process it. But the first phone call was the first time I had to utter the words out of my own mouth that I have cancer. And that was very, very hard. And so, of course, my husband incredibly supportive. And, you think about a woman's body and things like that. And he said, I just want you to know, no matter what happens, I'm going to love you. I didn't marry you for your breasts, right? My husband was very, very supportive. But the harder part then, it's just a series of hard, right? It's like choosing which hard you do next. The next one was telling my children. At the time, they were 4 and 7. So, old enough to know something wasn't quite right, but too young to understand really what cancer as a word meant. And so, and of course, a 4-year-old is different than a 7-year-old. And for the 4-year-old, the hardest part was trying to explain to him that he couldn't give mommy a hug for a while. And that was very, very, very painful because he was very confused by that. And the 7-year-old understood that mom needed surgery and things like that, but also I would say it has developed an incredible amount of compassion. She had to learn that at such a young age, and now she's 15, so 8 years later, she still continues to have that passion and compassion for cancer patients. But also, and this may not apply to everyone here, I've had to have conversations with her about the chances of her having breast cancer. And if you think about it, her grandmother had breast cancer, her mother had breast cancer. Ironically, my mother-in-law, so her other grandmother had cancer. So I've had to had some hard conversations with her about, what does it look like for her as she grows older? And, again, with the intentionality, these are the powerful conversations that you don't really want to have with your children, of course. Um, but they open up that space of trust. Children are smarter than we all think, right? And open up that space of authenticity between a parent and a child. So those were the hardest conversations to have with my family. Beyond that, you could imagine my dad was having PTSD on the whole thing. But we worked through that with him.
What point did you engage your kids? As far as telling them what was going on, did you tell them right away? And what would you suggest to people going through the same thing as far as sharing with their kids?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, kids are smarter than you realize, and whether that's they're at a toddler age or they're a teenager age. And I mean, I didn't tell them right away. I think I probably told them like a week later, but they see mom and dad having whispering conversations. Again, they're not oblivious to kind of something is up. And I think it's always important to just deliver the news age appropriately and transparently. One of the lessons I learned, I know that, when I was in my 20s when my mom was diagnosed, and she didn't probably tell me everything. And that was also in the beginning, right? And it was probably a little bit painful to find out later on. And so I also took that lesson of like, I would have rather known the hard stuff in the beginning. And so I took that lesson again in an age appropriate way for my kids. And my kids are now, they're super supportive. They know that I've written a book. They know what's happened to me. They talk about it. It's an open, authentic conversation that we've been able to have as they've grown older.
You know what? I've interviewed a number of parents, and as well as, I've even interviewed some parents with their kids.
Mm.
And what I've found is how incredibly mature that these kids are.
Yes,
You
for
know,
sure.
I mean, more so than the average kid.
Yeah.
People who have gone through these health journeys and health crises. In fact, we just had one a few weeks ago with Dr. Gary Phillips and his daughter. We had both of them here, and they shared their experiences with his health journey. Do you find the same thing has happened with your kids?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just been um, a great open dialogue that we've been able to have over time. And it does mature kids faster than, of course, we all want to, right? That's probably uh, not, it's like the dark side of it is that they're forced to grow up faster than probably their peers. But I do appreciate, we all know somebody. I mean, I think you start off by saying everyone now is going to know somebody who has cancer, in their life somewhere. Show me somebody that doesn't, and I will call them a liar, right? So it's just really an interesting thing. Yeah, Michael, and then I have to run. I have another meeting to get to. I'm so sorry, but Michael, question for you from you.
Yeah, so in your experience, because you've been in the cancer, not had cancer, but treat, with kids and all the rest of it, and you said nobody is not affected from cancer. So, I estimated that it's like 100 million people in North America because of the family
Yeah.
dynamic. So, do you think it's bigger than that?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, but probably.
Yeah.
Right. I speak in large audiences, and I usually say, raise a hand if you know somebody who's been in a cancer journey, whether yourself, a friend, or family member, and every single person will raise their hand.
So
You know,
what's the disconnection that because Mark is saying every time he talks to somebody, they're very open and to talking with them about their cancer, but yet we our policies and our lifestyle doesn't revolve around that.
yeah. Oh,
Everybody's I always I'm confused by why that happens.
oh, same, same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I do think, again, I'm not a statistician, but I suspect cancer rates in this country and in this world have gone up over the last 10 years. So,
They have. Oh yeah, big time. Well, thanks for being here. Nice seeing you in
yes,
person.
it's so great to see everybody. And Russ, hugs to you. It's great to see you. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Send me a message on LinkedIn or anywhere. Love you all. Love you, Mark. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica. It's always great to see you and interact with you and share the stage with you because that I don't know what it is, but ever since we've met originally, we've just hit it off and things just flow. And once again, that has happened. So thank you so much for sharing it. And there's so much more to your story that we haven't heard, and it's too bad that you have to go. But thank you so much for
Yeah.
uh, joining us and sharing with us, and
Well, I
and
will put it, how about this? I will put in the chat before I run. I'm so sorry, I'm at work and I've got another meeting. This is my website and there's a blog there, and there's all sorts of other things you can read. I particularly there's a whole section on journaling, and just some other parts of the story you can grab there.
all right. So we're gonna be putting up this
Thanks,
video
everyone.
on our Facebook page, so you'll be able to access that. Uh, what we're going to do right now is we're going to close off the recording. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community. And we will see you next week, same place, same time. Thank you.